Welcome back to the Discovery Driven Growth, an Idea Whose Time Has Come webinar. This is The Conversation Continues. We receive so many great questions that we can't possibly get in 10 minutes. We'd like to be able to answer those for you now. So Rita, are you game?
I'm game.
All right, wonderful. First question, Mario is asking, how do you decide where to innovate in a company or how to prioritize efforts?
So that's a great question, which is where do you start? Where do you begin to innovate? And there's a lot of different places you could. I would say the first thing, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is you really want to be taking a portfolio view of things. And if you've got the kind of company which has never innovated, never done anything, I would start with a relatively small project around a pretty clearly defined customer pain point. So it could be something as simple as let's redesign our invoices so that our customers can actually understand them, or let's do something with the way we deliver customer service that would allow us to reach out to customers in a more complete way. And what you want to start with is something that's pretty close to your core so that you're not experimenting too far away and nobody understands what's going on. And then from there you can kind of gradually begin to build a larger group of innovators. One of the companies that I've worked with that has done this very successfully is they've developed what they call a community of practice around innovation. So what the leader of this group did was he went out and found kind of across the organization like-minded people, and he started really small. He brought them together for the occasional lunch and learn or a seminar, or he took a few on a field trip to another company. But he started to build up this kind of connective tissue, which began then to throw up ideas about, hey, if I put this together with that, together with this, I could have something really new for my customers. And that was kind of a great idea, but because we already had pieces of the solution, it was much easier to get that moved forward. So I think if you've really never done anything at all, starting small with something that's closer to what we already know how to do is smart.
All right, Jeff asks, do you think large corporations can benefit from building off-site digital or innovation partner labs?
So Jeff, that's a great question. And part of what I hear is the frustration of, oh my God, this company is so ridiculous. Like I just want to leave. I want to go somewhere completely different and do my own thing because it's just too much effort to hassle with headquarters. And that can work for certain purposes, but you have to remember the whole purpose of doing digital transformation or innovation work is you want to transform the parent company. So if you're off doing your own thing somewhere else, you're not going to have the same transformational outcome. And I've seen a lot, unfortunately, of these kind of skunk works or labs or whatever they're calling, incubators, what they call them these days, and they go and off and incubate, and that's great, and then they come back to the parent, and the parent kind of goes, I don't want to do any of that. So it can be good to get started, and it can be good to create early definitions of success. It can be good to create sort of standalone demonstrations of how powerful this can be, but you really need to be building those external features with a view towards how eventually are we going to have it land back at the parent. And I think it's that twin idea of, yes, it needs to get its own dedicated workforce and its own space, perhaps, but it also needs to be given a thought to how are we going to bring this back home when we need to.
Great. All right, Mark asks, how do you better measure business performance away from measures like RONA, return on net assets, etc., which forces businesses to focus on short-term achievements?
Well, that has to be one of the $64 million questions. Because here's what I would argue. When you're in a situation with a fair amount of certainty to it, you can use traditional measures like the ones we teach at business school, right? Net present value, return on net assets, return on investment, you name it, right? And if you were to ask me, can you give me those numbers for how much money we're going to make from the Columbia graduating MBA program of 2019, I would answer, yes, I can, because that number is going to be very similar to the Columbia graduating class of 2018, right, because those things don't change very much. High certainty. If, on the other hand, you go into a very uncertain situation. So tell me what virtual reality is going to mean for business school education, next year. I couldn't tell you that. You couldn't tell me that. Nobody knows. The data don't exist yet. And so we have to rely on a concept that I call option value. And it's a very intuitive idea. The fact that you folks are taking up a little bit of your day to come and listen to what we have to say, that's an investment in option value. You didn't know before you flipped the switch all the great ideas it might prompt or the people that you'd want to talk to or, oh, wow, I should go get this book. You don't know that now, but you think it's interesting and it probably is worth an investment of your time. And that's the mindset that you want to bring to bear when you're assessing new ventures. So with new ventures, what you want to be looking at is things like, how many assumptions did I test? Did I spend a little bit of money to figure out where the dead ends are so that I don't waste more money pursuing them? Have I learned something? Can I put a cost to learning? And one of the critical things to be aware of in this model is, don't think of it as I tried something and it failed. Think of it as, was it worth it to me to learn what I needed to learn?
Right.
So for example, with us, we're doing a lot online right now, and we don't know yet what the real model is going to be. Nobody's really figured it out, but we're willing to experiment. And so if we spend, I don't know, $10,000 to try an online model of some kind or other, and people get value out of it, that teaches us something. Right. So even if it doesn't turn out to be the business, it's still something useful we've learned, and it's worth that investment.
Right. And innovation and learning need to go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
All the way down the line.
They do.
Right? Yeah.
They do.
Great. From Jeffrey, what are some best practices in aligning incentive systems with the innovation process?
So incentives, it all comes down to that eventually at the end of the day. What you need if you want people to do innovative things is you need to be recognizing and rewarding that. And that takes a number of different levels. So the first thing is, I would ask, is it visible? When you are assessed, is there some set of metrics that has to do with your either support of or direct participation in something that's innovative? So that's step one. A little bit even more amplified is, does your engagement in innovation represent a requirement for you to get to the next level of management? In other words, are you able to become a senior leader without ever having gotten involved in innovation? If the answer is yes, well, then you've got a problem. And I'm not saying everybody's going to be innovative. We're not all totally creative thinkers and blank sheet of paper people, but you have to show that you understand it, support it, can push it forward. In terms of very specific measures, you'd be looking at things like number of ideas tested, how much stuff came in the pipeline, how much has moved, at what pace, right? Have we winnowed down the body of ideas that we're looking at so that what we have left is really sharply defined? Have we done things with the right discipline? Have we fostered intelligent failures? There's a whole series of metrics which aren't the typical financial metrics, but which make it clear that the organization cares about innovation and we're paying attention.
Great, great. From Andres, what will be the next competitive advantage if all companies become customer-centric?
The next competitive advantage after customer centricity? That's an interesting question. Well, first of all, I think that's highly likely not to happen. I just see too many companies that as they become successful, it's almost like a law of nature that they start to develop these bad habits of not becoming really customer centric. But I think what you're going to start to see is real competitive advantages from the people, the kind of webs of people and networks that that create companies today. And I think the organizational form is going to be a bit different. Even today, what we're seeing is, rather than, say, a bank offering you banking services, and it's a vertically integrated stack. What we're seeing now more are ecosystems. So one company might offer you the user interface, another one might offer you the securitization, another one might offer you the long-term interest. This is actually something I'm talking about very actively with Fujitsu. In fact, I was just at a meeting the other day with them, and they're looking at what technologies are going to be used to support those kind of ecosystems of service provision rather than just a company providing a service. So I think the nature of how we become customer-centric and what that really means will all continue to evolve.
Great. And one final question from Yoon. And this is a personal one.
Oh.
What are you working on right now that excites you in the innovation space?
Oh, Yoon, thank you for asking. I am working on a new book. It's about strategic inflection points, and the title is going to be Seeing Around Corners. Seeing strategic inflection points before they hit you. And the whole book is about, it's in 3 parts. The first part is really, how do you set yourself up to even see them? And the phrase that Andy Grove used that I think is just brilliant was, he said, snow melts from the edges. And what he meant by that was changes in your business don't sort of present themselves in a neat package at your corporate boardroom, right? They're out there. They're where customers are asking an odd question, or a competitor's appearing that you never thought about
right.
before, or some new technology is making something possible. So the first part of the book is about how do you even see them. The second part of the book is how do you mobilize the organization to be able to act on what you saw.
The process.
The process, right, which is very much around innovation, because responding to an inflection point requires innovation. And then the third part is how do you manage the people, the talent, and your own inflection points in life. So that's my biggest this research project at the moment.
That's great. Well, we look forward to that. Rita, thank you so much again for being with us today, and thank all of you for your great questions. We hope you enjoyed The Conversation Continues.